A big part of life seems to be all about finding yourself in a point A, sort of your present moment, where you are right now, and kind of looking out into the future and imagining a point B, a sort of better place that you might be able to find yourself in some aspect of your life. Sometimes there are big lifestyle changes or big life goals that we're trying to accomplish, but this is the same thing that we're also going through all the time, even if it's just something as simple as trying to find something to eat. Right? We're always kind of finding ourselves in a point A and trying to move to a kind of better point B. So regardless of what goal it is that you're trying to accomplish, it can really benefit us to think about this process that takes place, right? The journey. How do you successfully go from being in a state of point A to point B? How can you most successfully navigate that experience? We've talked about this a little bit in past videos, but today I want to dive really deep with you to understand a map that you can use to more successfully navigate whatever goal it is that you're trying to accomplish and realize in your life. So let's talk about that. In essence, what you could say is that what we're talking about is problem solving, right? You have a problem that you're trying to solve, okay? So when most people think about problem solving, they think about a process that looks something like this. You discover that you have a problem, right? And then you start to think through, well, what's a possible solution to this problem? What's something that I could do that would create a solution and resolve this problem? And then lastly, I need to execute on that solution, right? So, I mean, if we find ourselves in a state of point A and we arrive somewhere that isn't exactly where we wanted to arrive, usually the most amount of analysis that people will do is they'll come back here and they'll say, okay, well, maybe my solution wasn't the right solution, right? Maybe I should have done something different. Or if that wasn't the case, it was, well, maybe the solution was right, but the way that we executed on it wasn't the best execution. We had a good idea, we had a good solution, but we just didn't execute it on it properly, right? And so we tend to kind of think about our whole sort of problem-solving process just simply with these three stages. But the reality is that this is actually only half of the picture of how we as humans perceive and think about the problems that we try to solve every day. In fact, there are two other stages that take place in our minds even before we recognize that we have a problem that we're trying to solve. And it's extremely important for us to understand what these stages are and how they affect our way that we can perceive and solve the problems that we're facing in our lives. So the first one that we want to talk about is called awareness. Okay? Awareness plays a big role in how you perceive the problems that you're facing. The way that awareness works is it's essentially, imagine if you look at this little graphic down here, right? You have all these inputs, right, that are coming towards you, but how many of those things actually make it into your head? You need to have senses to be able to receive that information, right? And so your awareness deals with your ability to perceive, right? How much can you sense? What kinds of things out there in reality are actually making it into your head? Okay, so one example that we could talk about right now is Wi-Fi. Right now on my person, right, I don't possess any ability to recognize whether or not I have a Wi-Fi problem in the room that I am in right now. My body doesn't have those senses, right? I can't sense what kind of signal I have, right, from Wi-Fi. But with something like a phone, right, you actually can, right? You can take a look at your phone and it has senses that it can kind of check the Wi-Fi signal around you and give you information about what kind of Wi-Fi situation you're in, right? And so that's an example of how you can have more senses that give you higher levels of awareness. Now I can recognize and identify problems in certain areas. So in past videos, we actually kind of illustrated this by this idea of trying to solve a Rubik's Cube and how you might think about solving that problem differently if you only were able to see the world in completely black and white, right, versus in color, how those different senses, those different levels of awareness would change the way that you perceive the problem. So that's kind of what the awareness stage is about, is it references your senses, right? Not just physical, biological senses, because those are important, right? And your ability to actually see and sense your environment, right, in the ways that we can. But this is also a psychological concept, right? What kinds of things are you able to perceive that can help you identify if there's a problem or not, right? A classic one is sort of that idea of, do you have the ability to recognize if maybe somebody is feeling uncomfortable in a conversation that you're having, right? That's sort of a sense, it's an input, it's an ability to kind of perceive a sensitivity to something, an awareness of something. And if you have that awareness, it can help you recognize whether or not there's a problem or not, right? So one big aspect of things to kind of consider when you're thinking about solving a problem is, do I have all the levels of awareness that I need to appropriately solve this problem, right? The senses that you might have, right, or the levels of awareness that you might have are going to play a role in helping you to identify proper problems, and that kind of trickles all the way down through the solutions you come up with and the execution. So awareness is an important thing to think about, of how that influences what problems you even perceive in the first place, right? So that's useful. There's a whole lot we could talk about your levels of awareness and the things that you're aware of, right? And how that could affect the problems that you're trying to solve. But that's also still just the second stage, right, that we want to talk about. I also wanted to introduce you to another stage, another step in this whole process that gives us this more complete picture. And that is called your aim, or as I like to kind of refer to it, your state of aim. Well, think about how we were just talking about awareness, right? You're a brain. You're floating around inside of this headspace, right? Okay. And so you've got senses, right? You've got information that's coming into your brain. And if you have the proper senses, proper levels of awareness, right? There's lots of information that's coming inside of your brain, right? If you don't have the right levels of awareness, right, they're not making it to you. You're not actually able to perceive them. But assuming you do, right, you've got good eyes that function, you've got good ears that function, you've got maybe technology and things that allow you to get access to that information, that's great, right? It's all making it to your head. Well, our brains are actually kind of designed to try to be really efficient, right? That's a lot of information. And so what our brains do is, even though all that information is coming into our heads and it's making it into our minds, our brains will actually filter that information, filter that awareness. It filters that depending on where we are aiming, as in what our goal or objective is. Our mind will filter that awareness. Think about right now how your feet feel, assuming you're wearing shoes or socks or something, how your feet feel being inside of your shoes right now. You can probably wiggle your toes and feel what that feels like. But 30 seconds ago, you were probably not thinking about how that feels, how your feet feel inside of your shoes. It's not like that awareness wasn't there. It's not like your feet weren't sending that signal. Those signals were making it to your head, right? You had that awareness, that information was making it to you. But because of what your goal was, or your objective, maybe learning something in this video, your brain is filtering out that awareness. It's filtering out that information because it's not necessarily relevant to your objective. Okay, so there's a whole lot we could talk about here, and I think we need to kind of spend a little bit of time making sure we really understand how your state of aim works inside of your head. So let's take a couple more examples. Okay, so another classic piece of research that was done by the same kind of thing here is by Daniel Simons. And he did this research on attentional awareness, and he had this example where he would show people this video of two teams playing basketball, and they'd have a team in white shirts and a team in black shirts. And so the video would say, count how many times one of these teams in the colored jerseys passes the ball. And so you'd be focusing on this team, watching them pass the ball back and forth. And as the video was playing, you'd count how many passes, and at the end of the video, it would say, okay, the correct answer was, like 16 or something like that. But then it would ask you, but did you see the dancing bear? And people would say, what? A dancing bear? And then they would rewind the video. And then sure enough, as the video played along, halfway through, the video, suddenly you'd see this dancing bear kind of walk through the screen. On average, 1 out of every 2, about 50% of the viewers, the participants in the study, did not notice, right, the dancing bear, or in the original study, it was actually a gorilla. They wouldn't notice the guy in the costume show up right in the middle of the video. And so the reason why, right, is because people were focusing their aim on a certain objective, right? And so your brain starts to filter out your awareness. It's not like the bear wasn't there, right? I mean, the stimulus, the light from that video was still making it to your retinas, making it to your brain. That awareness was there. The information was making it to your head. But because of your state of aim, you would filter out things that weren't relevant to the objective on which you were focused. Okay, so you have a head, right? Information is making its way to you, but depending on what you are focused on, depending on what your goals and the objectives are, your brain will filter out a lot of that awareness in order to help you accomplish what it is that you're objectively trying to accomplish, right? So that's your state of aim. Now, when I say that your state of aim filters your awareness, that's true. I think, by now I've kind of taken 2 examples, and I think this is kind of starting to settle in. But it goes actually much deeper even than this. And so I want to tell you a story that hopefully can kind of drive you home just how important it is to think about what your state of aim is and how that affects your ability to perceive and think about the problems that you're facing. Okay, so this story is a story a couple years ago. I was thinking about this kind of stuff a lot. I was chopping some wood in my backyard, getting some wood ready to make a little fire. It was wintertime. And I was spending a lot of time chopping some wood. And at a certain point, I started getting a little tired. And I thought, man, I need to take a break. I've been chopping wood for a while. I need a place to sit down. And I kind of looked around and didn't have anywhere to that seemed like a convenient place to sit down and take a break. But I noticed the logs seemed like, hey, this is perfect. And they looked like a good little seat. And so I sat down and took a little break on sitting on a log, right? And this doesn't seem like this is anything. There's nothing super interesting about this. But I think there really is. There's something fascinating about how quickly our minds are able to do this. And able to change from being in a perspective of, I'm chopping wood, and now this wood that I'm chopping for a fire is now suddenly a perfect place to sit down. Maybe this doesn't seem amazing to you, but this is absolutely insane. And I need to tell you a little bit more about why I think this is so fascinating. So we have a tendency to think about the world out there, right? Reality. Out here are objects. I've got my table. I've got all the stuff in this room, right? That there are materials out there in the universe. And we have a tendency to think that because of what they are, that they have inherent attributes, right? That they possess inherent attributes and that we perceive those attributes. So using this firewood example, right? There's a piece of firewood and we tend to think that the universe works in such a way that because of what it is, right? A log has attributes, like it's firewood, right? It has those attributes. Because of what it is, it sort of broadcasts those attributes out, and that we use our senses of awareness to capture that, right? So it passes through my eyes and it passes through my awareness to make it to me, and I process that and I say, oh, look, firewood, right? We have a tendency to think that it starts with the objects, that they have attributes and that those attributes are collected and perceived by us. And we notice those things and then we make choices to do things based off of what we observe about the things that are around us. This is how we tend to think that the world works. Things are out there. I'm trying to observe those things, see what's relevant about them, pull that information and then make choices. The reality is that this is actually complete opposite from how we actually work, right? The way things really work is it starts with us, right? We start with a state of aim. In my case, I had an objective, which was I need to keep a fire going. That state of aim pushes through my awareness and into my reality, into the things that are around me, right? And so I have a state of aim, which is I need to keep a fire going. I'm looking for things that will help me do that. And then I find, right, the things that can help me in that objective, right? I can be burned, right? And so as I'm chopping wood, right, my state of aim will suddenly shift, right? As my objective starts to turn from, instead of chopping wood, it suddenly kind of shifts and turns into, oh, I'm kind of feeling tired, I need to sit down. That state of aim shifts, passes through my awareness, filters my awareness, and then changes the way that I see the things that are around me. And a log can suddenly turn into something that says, I'm conveniently shaped like your bottom. It's a great place to sit, right? And so now I, in one instance, was looking at something that looked like firewood, and in a second, suddenly that thing turns into a seat, something to sit on, right? That's what your aim does. It not only helps you observe the world around you, but it filters your awareness. Our eyes, yes, are sort of like cameras, but in a way, our eyes and mind are also sort of like projectors. It gives meaning. We put meaning onto the things that are around us, right? The objects in reality don't have meaning necessarily inherently in their attributes, but we project that meaning onto them. Okay, so that means it's time for this creepy graphic here, which says you see what you aim at, right? So depending on what you are aiming at, your objectives, you will see what you're looking for, right? Your aim filters out the things that you're looking for to help you see the things that are in alignment with your objectives, okay? So you see what you aim at, right? So aim filters your reality. Your state of aim, regardless of what information you have coming into through your senses, your objective, what you're trying to accomplish, will collapse and filter your reality into 3 categories, okay? It'll turn things into tools, right? So things that are going to be helpful to you in accomplishing your objective. You will be able to perceive those things. You will feel them as sort of like aids or tools, things that can help you. You'll be able to perceive things as obstacles, right? So things that stand in your way, right? So you can do this right now. If you imagine wherever you're sitting and you look around, right? Find a door and imagine trying to get to that door as fast as you can. As your aim changes towards that door and trying to get out that door, you will notice around you how certain things are tools, pathways, things that can help you get to that door, and maybe things that are obstacles, right? Maybe a sofa turns into an obstacle, right? And then if you change your objective to maybe, hey, I should try to get out that window instead, right? Everything will change, right? Things will change to things that can help you, things that can stop you, and your state of aim will do that, right? It'll filter things into tools and obstacles. So anything that's going on around you out there that is coming in through your awareness that isn't considered a tool or an obstacle, right? Your brain will classify as irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It doesn't see a way in which this thing adds any sort of relevancy to the goal that you're trying to accomplish. And because it's trying to save energy and not process all this stuff and bring all of this to your consciousness, it'll make those things essentially invisible. Those things that are not relevant to your state of aim, to your objective, become invisible to your consciousness. Your subconscious might still be aware of them, but your conscious self, the part that's thinking about the problem you're trying to solve, won't see them, right? And so this is how people can watch a video that has this dancing bear, right? That dancing bear is making its way into your eyeballs, right? It's there and it's passing its way into your brain, but because your state of aim is focused on counting the players who are passing the ball, that passes through your awareness, right? And then the bear becomes irrelevant and therefore invisible. And so you don't see the bear, right? You don't see it because it's irrelevant to the objective that you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so creepy graphic time again. But this is an important one. You see what you aim at. Okay, and this is both biological and psychological, right? Your brain, your eyeballs during development are actually a part of your brain. Your brain pushes some of its cells forward and those develop and turn into your eyeballs, right? So when you are pointing your eyes at something, you literally are pointing. It's more like you're pointing your brain at something, right? And so that's really important to think about when you just think about the biological aspect of how we function. But it's also important to think about this from a psychological perspective. Our objective, what we're trying to accomplish, right? It will filter and sort of reorient everything around us, and we can miss things. Okay, so this represents a more complete map of how humans think about and sort of process the problems that they're solving. Your aim and awareness stages are super important, right? These affect everything that comes down the tracks. Depending on what your state of aim is and what kind of awareness you have and have developed, that will influence what kinds of problems you perceive. And then, of course, the solutions you come up with for those and how you execute on them, right? And so it all starts with, well, problems are really important. We need to solve the problems that we're facing every day. But how do we know which problems are the most important problems to be solving? And so it's important to be thinking about your aim and your awareness. In a sense, you can think of it kind of like when you discover that you have a problem, that's kind of like waking up on the shore of your consciousness, right? You're sort of emerging out of your subconscious. And that's where your active conscious self starts thinking about, oh, I've got a problem and I've got to come up with a solution for this and execute on it. And that is important. There's so much stuff that we need to do there, right? Solving our problems. But it's important to think about, just to remember, every time I recognize that I have a problem, I should also think about the unconscious stages that are taking place that led me to believe that that was a problem in the first place. And we can still actually make choices over these things, even though they happen unconsciously at first. When we discover we have a problem, we can move back and do a little bit more of due diligence on trying to analyze for ourselves. What things was I aware of that led me to the conclusion that this is a problem? And is my state of aim focusing me in the right direction to even consider this as a problem in the first place? Okay? All right, we're going pretty deep here, but I think this is good stuff. Okay, you still with me? Okay, so we're going pretty deep here. Let's use some concrete examples of how this can really make a difference for you. In particular, there's a really cool example from the book Creativity Inc. by Ed Catmull. So this is the president of Pixar. And he talks about a situation that Disney went through kind of in the 90s. In the 90s, Disney was crushing it. They're making all these awesome films. Lion King was like the highest grossing animated film for a long time, all the way up until I think Finding Nemo overthrew it. So it was, a super successful film. And these are kind of the glory days for Disney in the 90s. And it's because their state of aim that they kind of inherited from Walt Disney was to make compelling stories, right? To make compelling stories to share with the world. And so it was sort of a story-first driven company, right? And that aim filtered through everything in their sort of problem-solving process. The problems that they perceived were problems that had to do with, are we telling compelling stories, right? But it started with their aim. Well, after sort of the 90s or so, Ed Catmull talks about, there was kind of a change in leadership and certain things started to happen in the company where their state of aim changed. The business people, the marketing people, the numbers guys kind of started to lead more on the company, and everything started to be perceived more from a perspective of, is this thing going to be profitable, right? Is this thing going to make money? And so the state of aim changed from story first and compelling stories first to feed the beast. We've got this big company. We need to make something that's going to make money so we can pay for all of our employees. That shift in the state of aim filtered through the entire company, right? And so all of the productions, all of the movies were viewed from that angle. And because of that, they weren't as compelling of stories anymore. And it kind of led to Disney going through this slump in the early 2000s where they were kind of trying to find their feet, how to do this again. And it wasn't until they acquired Pixar that they're able to refresh that state of aim and get back to a company that was more story first, which led to those big hits like Tangled and Frozen and some of these big new record-breaking films, right? So that's kind of the example of some of the ways in which your state of aim can reorient everything that you're doing and can change how you're perceiving the problems that you're facing. Okay, so your awareness and your aim. Okay, it's important to think about these things. It's also important to think about how are other organizations, systems, or people trying to influence your awareness, right? This happens to us all the time, right? We live in a world where organizations and brands, companies, and other people are trying to manipulate the information that we have access to. Sometimes it's not exactly nefarious, there's not some big conspiracy, but it can just simply be that people everywhere have an interest in trying to guide what you have access to, the information that you have available to you, what is in your realm of awareness, right? And that will influence the things that you recognize as problems. Okay, so don't let people be pulling the strings, right? And deciding what problems are you're going to consider are your problems simply because of what information you are exposed to, right? That's just something to think about. Think about this stuff so you can have more control over your own life. You have problems that you're trying to solve that are important to you, that I hope will make a difference in a good way for you in your life. You want to solve problems that are going to move you forward towards the goals that are going to make a difference for you. To do that, you need to have some awareness and some understanding about how you as a human being think about and perceive the problems that are taking place inside of your life, right? When you recognize a problem, either in yourself, when you identify a problem needs to be solved, or if somebody else is trying to compel you to solve a problem that they've identified, take the time to do the due diligence to understand what kinds of information and awareness was used to identify this thing as a problem, and what was the state of aim that somebody was in. Where were they aiming? What's their goal or objective that brought them to the conclusion that this was a problem in the first place? Think about that, okay? Own your own problems. That's what I want for you, okay? So I hope this video today was useful for you. Wrapping this up for you today, this is what you call the general problem-solving model. Aim, awareness, problem, solution, execution, okay? So this map can be a useful tool to consider when you're thinking about something that you're trying to accomplish in your own life. So hopefully, if you need to think about that, think about it. If you need to come back here and watch this video again, that'd be great. It'd be great to see you again, okay? And hopefully this was helpful for you. And I sincerely hope that you can be more successful in solving some of those meaningful problems that will make a difference for you, okay? We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. These videos are made possible by your support. The Elkadeo Way is a crowd-funded studio creating maps, experiences, and tools to help humans who are in the pursuit. So we make things like the video you just watched. So if you're a person trying to accomplish a meaningful change in your life, these resources were made specifically for you, and we hope that they've helped. You can help support this project and get access to some cool unique perks and benefits by becoming a supporter. Get early access to the videos and resources we produce, exclusive media and printable assets, access to our platform to connect with me and others in our community, and you can even help play a role in developing future content on the channel. All this and more when you become a formal member of the Elkadeo Way. Visit www.elkadeo.com/subscribe to pick a membership plan that feels right to you. Any amount you pledge for any amount of time makes a tremendous difference to us. So next time you're looking for an opportunity to give, we hope you'll consider joining us. Thanks for being here today. And until next time, be one.